Alright, YouTube, Obama's saying that the most embarrassing thing since 1983 has been done by the Senate. Specifically, they dared to override his veto with near unanimity, which is what they passed the 9/11 bill in the first place with. Because he vetoes the 9/11 bill. He has warned that foreign governments will now be able to sue the United States for various things because of this. It sets a legal precedent. My question is this: what's wrong with that? What's wrong with the United States being sued by civilians overseas that have been improperly killed or harmed in some way, or those, if they're dead, of course, their relatives, or something along those lines? What exactly is wrong with a little bit of accountability? If these drone strike programs that he's so fond of are so effective, then I would think that paying money to people when you accidentally, killed their father, killed their sister, killed their loved one or something, I think that'd be a small price to pay. See, the problem is this: more than 75% of everyone killed by our drone program is a civilian, not a combatant. That's why he's worried. Secondly, he attempted to veto the 9/11 because of this, and I assure you that this is the case. He's been promised money by Saudi Arabia. I guarantee it. He's been like their best friend. Why do you think the arms deal to Saudi Arabia that was briefly interrupted ended up going through? It's because Obama and some of his ilk, they get kickbacks from the Saudis. The Saudis are filthy rich. When we reacted to 9/11, we invaded the wrong country. We shouldn't have bothered with Afghanistan. Fuck Osama. Osama's small time. Osama didn't really have nearly as much of a fundraising apparatus. Okay, he had opium sales. That's great. The House of Saud, which actually funded the attacks, wasn't Osama. Osama may have directed them, but the House of Saud helped him pay for the whole thing. They get their money from oil. The reason that we didn't react by leveling Riyadh after 9/11 is because our government covered it up because it said, well, that's going to be a disaster because, we need oil. Now, we could just get it from, like, the Venezuelans. I don't care if they're socialist. I really don't care if there's still a bunch of Chavistas down in Venezuela. We should be getting it from this hemisphere. We also don't need nearly as much Middle Eastern oil now anyway, because of fracking, because of the growth of the solar industry and natural gas right here being as prevalent as it is. We don't need to ship in our fuel from half a world away, which is about the least efficient thing we could be doing. We should be drilling for it here. If we're going to absorb oil, we should use our own oil and say, fuck the Middle East. I never supported the war in Iraq. I never supported really bothering to go into Afghanistan. Of course, Osama was hiding out in Pakistan. I still question whether Osama didn't die of renal failure, half a decade before we supposedly killed him. That's what Benazir Bhutto, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, who conveniently got assassinated not long after saying it, said some years ago. But let's be ambivalent about that. Let's just assume that the government's general story is true, that this isn't the next Gulf of Tonkin, which, 40 years later they declassify a report. Oh yeah, there was no actual, hostile attack there. Some homegrown issue, some minor problem, and we used it as a cause for war because we wanted to go get some blood on our dicks or something like that. Let's assume that they're right, and it was 100% Osama, acting, of course, with Saudi money, and he was in Afghanistan, and he hadn't died of renal failure, and so forth. Why didn't we target the House of Saud, the ones who funded this shit? Why didn't we target Saudi Arabia for contributing most of the hijackers, all of the money involved, for building a bunch of fucking madrasas all over the Middle East that teach the jihadist mentality, basically go die for Saudi Arabia because we control Mecca? That's essentially what the ideology boils down to as far as the global jihadist movement goes. You think ISIS operates without some level of behest from the Saudis? They make a big show about putting a bunch of tanks on their northern border. Oh, we gotta keep ISIS out. I doubt that that's actually genuine. I think that that's more keeping up appearances than anything else. It's good that the 9/11 bill passed. Fuck Obama. Obama doesn't know what he's talking about. He's either too ignorant to understand what the bill means, which makes sense considering that he thought Obamacare was a good idea, or he's pandering because he's being paid by the Saudis, or probably both. Now, the only one who apparently sort of sat it out was Harry Reid. Voted against it. Tim Kaine didn't show up to vote because he's, kind of a running mate right now. It'd look a little bit bad for little Timmy Kaine if he were to actually vote one way or the other on this. I think it's rather funny. This puts the Democrats between a cock and a hard place, because the current reigning Democratic president is trying to keep a bill from going forward that allows people within the United States to actually get some degree of restitution from a state that we all now know. Thank you for finally, after all these years, releasing the rest of the 9/11 report. We know it had to do with Saudi Arabia. They were involved at the highest possible level. It wasn't, oh, some middle management consultant living in Saudi Arabia ponied up a few $100,000 in order to fund Osama. It wasn't a case of, oh, well, one of the lesser House of Saud, like third cousins twice removed, decided to fund these attacks with the oil rig he inherited from Abdul al-Musarini or something like that. It was the House of Saud itself at the highest level, from the king on down of Saudi Arabia, that funded this. Now, it shouldn't be a surprise to us. What do you think they do with all that oil money? It's clearly not trickling down to the little people of Saudi Arabia, largely outside of some urban zones. Now, what it's used for is to build mosques and madrasas in the Middle East and beyond. They build them in Europe. They fund mosques here in the United States, which we shouldn't be allowing them to do. We should slap a bunch of sanctions on the bastards and say, we're not buying your oil anymore, go to hell, collapse already, and get it from Venezuela instead. That's what we should do if we're smart. Get it from this hemisphere. It's cheaper. Pay a couple dollars more per barrel. Still cheaper than shipping it that distance. Ship it right up from the northern coast of Latin America. Hey, maybe we can be buddy-buddy with the Venezuelans. We won't have problems with them anymore in our own hemisphere. Kind of an expanded Monroe Doctrine, a little bit of pragmatism for a change. Why the hell are we so addicted to Saudi oil? You know, if you're so addicted to their oil, you should have marched in, you should have told the American people, yeah, the Saudis did this, so we're going to go bomb Riyadh, kill everybody in the House of Saud, and we're going to occupy Saudi Arabia. We could have done it. What, so they're a so-called ally because they buy our weapons and sell us oil? That doesn't make them an ally. It doesn't make them some sort of major partner. It just makes them an opportunist state that happens to sell us fuel oil because at the time we didn't have anywhere else to buy enough. Well, that has changed. It's about fucking time that there was a little bit of responsibility. But then again, we have to remember, this traverses both parties. The 9/11 bill is bipartisan. It was unanimous in the Senate. Both Republicans and Democrats support it. It's only Obama trying to stand in the way. And as far as 9/11 goes, we've got to also remember, it wasn't just the Democrats, but it was also the Republicans under George W. at the time who tried to stiff all the first responders, say, oh, well, your lung condition, your skin condition, and your cancer had nothing to do with all those chemicals burning at 9/11 when you went there without pay for a week to clear out debris. Had nothing to do with inhaling asbestos and pulverized concrete. It had nothing to do with molten metal steaming in the sunshine. It had nothing to do... No. Your PTSD, oh, routine stress, had nothing to do with pulling all those body parts out of the wreckage. Oh, ha, we're not paying you a red cent. It was just like Gulf War syndrome. Few people even bother to talk about it. The fact that Saddam, the one time he actually deployed chemical weapons, he sort of failed. And the nerve gas didn't quite work because it was in the middle of a fucking storm, and as a result, low levels of exposure caused all sorts of neurological problems with people that went over there during that conflict under Herbert Walker Daddy Bush. Nobody wants to talk about that. You think this is a single-party issue? No, it's finally, both parties have a good idea. I don't think that it's going to cause foreign states to routinely sue the United States unless we happen to have a cell of terrorists in the United States that's conducting attacks overseas. And that doesn't really happen. And anyway, if it causes the United States government to get sued for conducting a bunch of what are essentially acts of war, drone strikes and random bombings and assassinations in foreign countries, so fucking what? Maybe it'll stop a war sometime. Maybe the fact that it'll be costly and time-consuming to conduct their drone program will make it go the way of the dinosaur. Good. I don't even support the existence of the drone program. It's not working. Proof is in the pudding. We've been running it for years over in these countries. All it does is piss people off because most of the targets end up being a bunch of civilians. Yeah, you kill a couple school children. Everyone in that community is now jihad-friendly. Congrats, you just converted an entire town to zealous jihadist ideology by conducting an extremely expensive drone strike. Maybe it would be better if the US government could be sued for doing this to prevent them from fucking messing up in the first place. Our antagonism in the Middle East did nothing good for us. I will point out, it drained our economy even as it has killed civilians overseas and increased jihad in the Middle East. It is not helpful to us in any way. We have no benefit from the shit that W and Obama have done. And Clinton is avoiding this issue like the plague. Why? Because on the one hand, she can weigh in and say, yeah, I support our president. Our president's a great man. Haha, fuck the 9/11 families. On the other side, she can say, oh yeah, Obama, I don't know what you're doing. You're just fucking pandering. What a loser. I used to say such nice things about you. She can't weigh in on the issue. It's hilarious to watch. She and Tim Kaine wouldn't touch the issue with a 40,000-foot pole. Good riddance to them. Go ahead and don't address the issue. You've got even the Democrats against Obama on this. So much for, yeah, we should maintain the status quo, because it's totally not corrupt. Obama's totally not going to get money from the Saudis for this. No, I guarantee he was promised money from the Saudis for this. He can't take it in office, but he's out of office soon. Why do you think he throws in a last-ditch effort? It'd be just like Bubba Bill with his 11th hour pardons of all sorts of mafiosos and tax frauds at the end of his second term, which people conveniently don't want to talk about right now. It was big news for a couple days there towards the very end. That and the fact that Hillary was trying to steal like the Tupperware from the White House kitchen or something like that. Nobody wants to touch the issue if they're a Democrat, because guess what? The Republicans, if the Democrats had formed like a partisan barrier, refused to join in the veto override so that it wouldn't go through, can you imagine what they'd be saying right now? Oh my God, these horrible Democrats, they don't want 9/11 family, these poor cancer victims and so forth to get compensated. Oh, it'd be a terrible losing issue. They would lose the White House for sure, but they'd also be losing massive support in the House and Senate. All their asses would be out. They had no choice but to back this. So it's a tough time for Obama and for Hillary. The thing is, the writing's been on the wall all along. The only reason why Obama would do this is as a symbolic gesture because he's being paid to do that. Guarantee it. Some Saudi has already offered him a couple million for that veto. Even if it's completely useless. To turn it into a partisan issue, hopefully to stifle it a little bit, get it, changed, it'll send it back to the House, give us a couple more days, do a little more lobbying. It's in vain, but that's why it happened. The 9/11 bill is a completely good idea. If it stops some drone strikes, I don't care. If it stops our government from sending a bunch of young Americans off to die in some desert without proper cause, I don't care. Good. Maybe it'll lower the cost of our military because we won't be constantly bombing things. Have we tried that out? No, we haven't been trying that since 9/11. Doesn't seem to have worked now, has it? Because I certainly don't see any less terrorism in the world. In fact, I see a hell of a lot more of it. After 9/11, for a while, it seemed like, oh, Madrid bombing, bombing here, maybe a little chlorine attack, but nothing major, 2 or 3 newsworthy attacks here. Now it's like every week there's some major massacre going on. Now, even the government has to warn, there's going to be a huge diaspora of terrorists in the next couple of years. You haven't seen anything yet. Well, that just, I'm sure that makes people in urban areas sleep really well at night. See, it was your fucking mistake. It was your fucking fault. Bush's fault for destabilizing Iraq. Obama's fault for destabilizing Libya and Syria. They're the same goddamn thing, and Clinton is too. Clinton's now talking about, let's destabilize Iran now. Let's fund some rebels there. Let's bomb a couple of their air bases. Let's start a war. Let's invade Iran. Yay, it'll be great. Nice quick war. Mission accomplished. What a fucking retard she is. If you're a Hillary Clinton supporter at this point, I can't respect you. I can't. I can try. Okay, I'll try. But it's so damn hard. Just listen to what this woman's saying. Compare it to what Bush said. Compare it to what Obama's been saying. Just look at their actions and their words. Try to reconcile them, please. Please try to get a grip on yourself. It's not that difficult to see what the fuck is happening here. It's constant warmongering. If foreign states, if people there can sue because their relative was blown up by a U.S. drone, I don't care. It's very funny to see Obama go down the gung-ho America route and talk about, well, we shouldn't be held accountable for bombing civilians. He's looking more and more like Bush every day, and so is fucking Hillary Clinton. That's why I have a problem with Hillary Clinton. I don't think people have quite realized that. That's about all. Peace out.